Welcome to Cinema Savants. He's Todd Vandenberg. I'm Rob Steele, and we've got a lot of movie news this week, but it's mostly hits and misses. That just seems to be how they all go. For example, the first of the misses would be my wife. No, different misses. They're making a new G.I. Joe movie, which in my mind is already going to be a miss, but they're already missing the biggest part of what the first two G.I. Joe movies were, and that's the original Snake Eyes. Even though this is going to be a Snake Eyes solo movie, Ray Park is not playing it, so I don't think it counts.
Doesn't count.
You can't do that. It's like making a Bond movie without anyone who's ever played Bond in the movie. It just doesn't work in my head. So, miss number one. Miss number two, and I don't know if you saw this. This made bigger news, and I thought it was funny. Has to do with the Oscars and Best Original Song and/or Best Original Score.
Yes.
Did you see this? This is the movies Mandy, Green Book, Solo, a Star Wars story, and The Other Side of the Wind will not have any consideration for any of those awards. Mainly because Green Book and Other Side of the Wind were knocked out for lack of original music, which I would think, immediate disqualification. Mandy, because was knocked out because the film was released on video on demand before it completed its qualifying run, and I'm not entirely sure what that means, other than you don't get one.
One week of theatrical exhibition before it's available for video on demand. And
is that what that is?
For some reason, they didn't figure out, let's wait 7 days instead of 5 or whatever it was. So kind of stupid on their part, which I've seen, and it's crazy. But anyway.
But then there's Solo. Solo is not going to be in consideration because they forgot to turn it in on time.
The Cleveland Browns, were they released Solo?
More like the Charlie Browns. I mean, no, I've done my homework. Here it was due yesterday. Oh, rats. It's just, how do you forget that?
Yeah, for casual sports fans who think I'm knocking the Browns for being losers, then, they're not really anymore.
They could make the playoffs this year, apparently.
They could. Well, they won't, but they could. No. But they submitted a trade proposal and forgot to send it in time. So their trade was voided by the league office. So that's what that references to, is just front office ineptitude. But yeah, exactly.
Like this, there's got to be someone in the office going, Dave, you had one job.
Yeah, and what company is behind Solo? I mean, it's not like we made the thing.
No,
and one of us forgot. Hello, Disney.
Damn it, Lee! You didn't do the. Yeah, that's right. Lee's not here again. Anyway.
That's just the craziest thing. How on earth do you forget to hit the deadline in a company that big? That's just, that was just amazing and hilarious.
I thought so. Other news out of Disney, which I think this is good news. Doctor Strange, which ended up being, I think, a surprise hit, kind of like Ant-Man, because Ant-Man and Doctor Strange were not the big, well-known, everybody knows who these characters are things in Marvel, and still made a damn good movie out of it.
Agreed.
But Doctor Strange is finally announced that they're getting a Doctor Strange 2 coming out in 2021. Yay. And Scott Derrickson has reportedly finalized the deal to direct it. So we've got a director, got a date. Quick, someone find us a writer. That part worries me a little bit. I would think you get why don't you have a writer before you get a date and a director? Mm-hmm. I don't get that. How do you even get that done? Don't you kind of have to at some point go, I've got this script, and then you turn it into a movie? Not, we need a movie. Here's all the stuff. We've got the actors, the special effects, the score that the Solo guy didn't do. We've got all the actors. What are we missing? Oh, yeah, a script.
I'm not that concerned about it, because he wrote the script for the first Doctor Strange movie in addition to directing. So I would assume if he's not the only writer, that he'll be working on it. So I totally know what you're saying, but 2021, they got a little bit of
They've
time.
got time.
They'll be okay. It's not like, I don't know, some random X-Men movie which is announced for, it's opening in April.
Yeah, I don't think any of them have scripts.
Yeah. Well, they do, and it's the Phoenix Saga. So they just look at a couple comic books and they said, okay, let's shoot this scene.
No, they looked at a couple of covers. These are the X-Men movies. Yeah. They looked at the covers and went, what do you think happens in this one? Well, I can't read it because I don't know how to read, so we'll make it kind of like this. Can you draw stick figures to make the picture look like movie? Yeah.
Hopefully at some point that changes. Oh my gosh.
Disney gets them back soon. Speaking of things that Disney is getting back, but they're not going to do anything with immediately, and this is kind of weird. There's a story in Variety about the Marvel Netflix shows.
Yes.
Of which we're expecting the cancellations of Jessica Jones and Punisher shortly after they air next year. Yes. Just like Daredevil, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. And they've said that they're not bringing them back on Disney Plus. Not that they won't be showing up again, but they're not doing it on Disney Plus. And that the deal for the 4 original shows says that those characters cannot appear in any non-Netflix series for at least 2 years after it's been canceled.
Which I understand their viewpoint, because obviously people can tune in and watch Daredevil who have not seen it at all. They can watch it next year. Yeah. So it would kind of cut down, the possible popularity of the show. If, why am I going to watch the old Daredevil? Oh, it's on Disney Plus now and its new episode's cool. But I kind of think you would still want to watch the original parts anyway. So you can watch the continuing stories. But basically, it just sucks. I mean, I understand it from a business standpoint, but it really, really sucks that we have to wait at least 2 years.
Kind of like the WWE's no compete clause. When they release somebody, they've got I think it's just a 90-day clause where they're not allowed to compete anywhere else.
Yeah, 90 days is a little more palatable than 2 years. That's the problem.
Now, one thing that came out about this is it does not include the Punisher, because the Punisher is not one of those original 4.
Right.
So we might see a Punisher thing before anybody else.
On Disney Plus. How ironic is that?
Because, that'll work. But coming up after Mickey's Playhouse, the Punisher. What? No.
As we were talking about before, maybe they'll have a separate, more adult-oriented...
Disney Plus.
Yeah. Just as... There's on the DC Universe where they have their segment, which is a little bit darker than the bright, sunny Super Friends, because they are showing Super Friends and Titans. It's on the same streaming network, so
yeah,
Disney could pull it off.
Speaking of, let's see, the Punisher, and Disney and DC stuff. Moving over to the DC Universe briefly, the Birds of Prey movie has added actor Chris Messina as the character Victor Zsasz.
Ooh, cool.
I like the idea. A lot of people don't know who Zsasz is. He's basically he's a serial killer who keeps a running tally of all the people he's killed by putting tick marks, carving tick marks into his body. And he's basically covered in tick marks. Not marks that look like the insect that ticks, just 1/2/ gets to 5 and that one connects them all. Tick marks, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh.
But he's supposed to be in this one the head henchman to Ewan McGregor's Black Mask. So, you know what? I'm good with that.
Yeah, pretty cool.
He's actually he was in Batman Begins, I think. It was one of them. But it was a very, very bit role. Yeah, this time it's going to be, a bit more fleshed out.
Yeah, pretty sure it was Batman Begins.
But also, speaking of the DCEU, because it's on again, off again, we're going to recast it. No, we're starting over. Mm-hmm. There's a way to fix it coming up. And I would love for them to do this correctly. They're not gonna, but I would love for they just finished doing the annual crossover between the DC shows on the CW network. which was not a bad crossover, by the way. So I think you can still watch them streaming on the CW website. Watch them there. It was actually a pretty good crossover. Although Stephen Amell does not look right in the Flash uniform at all whatsoever. So please don't do that again. Other than that, they announced that next year they're going to be doing Crisis on Infinite Earths, which if you know the comic, you're good. If you don't, it goes like this. The DC universe is broken up into an infinite number of Earths originally, because you'd have Superman and Batman on one Earth. Captain Marvel had his own Earth. Captain Atom, and his branch of characters, had another Earth. When they brought in the characters from Wildstorm Studios of Image, the Jim Lee stuff, that had its own Earth. And then they had the Crisis on Infinite Earths, where they all came together. Here's what they need to do. If you're not going to get Ben Affleck back as Batman, or Henry Cavill, there we go. Blanked on his name, but faster than a speeding bullet, it came back. Who knew? Getting him back as Superman. You do still have Gal Gadot and Jason Momoa. Bring them into this. That way you can get ahead of Marvel in tying all of these shows together with the movies. The way Infinite Earth ends up, their finale, the way they end everything, now is the perfect time to recast all of them. You can reboot the EU without ending it. Incorporate it into the TV series. You should see the hand gestures I'm using right now to illustrate this, that you can't because this is a radio show, but I'm doing it anyway. I think that would work, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, it would work. Do you really think they're smart enough to do that, though?
No.
They haven't shown much sense of direction or planning, for years now. So, well, they have, and it's been an awful direction.
Yeah.
Let's make Superman dark and angsty. And and this is before Man of Steel. Let's make him all worried and bothered and jealous of the new boyfriend. Back to Superman Returns, which was absolutely ridiculous and awful. Warner doesn't seem to know, as in their movie division, because the TV, they kind of have it figured out. They don't seem to know what to do with properties that they've had for decades, and it's really puzzling.
Closing in on a century.
Hey. No, Superman is not a dark, angsty, brooding guy. Stop it. It doesn't fit. It makes the movies bad.
Well, see, they're making up for when Batman was absolutely camp back in the 60s.
I guess that's what they're doing.
That's all I can come up with.
It's just... So for them to actually have a picture, an actual big picture, and do something which makes, as you said, tons of sense, because it's still... We still don't know if Henry Cavill's going to come back as Superman. Probably not, but who knows?
Just send his mustache. We'll be fine.
This is the opportunity, like you said, to recast and have it fit in the storyline. Not just be some jarring thing. It's like, oh, here's another guy playing Superman. It would work. Which means they probably won't do it.
Well, in the crossover they just finished doing, Superman was in it because he's part of the Supergirl TV show.
Right.
And they introduced a Lois. So you know what? There's your Superman and Lois. You just don't necessarily have to make another Superman movie. This guy was good enough, at least for the bit role that he played in this series. Use that as a bit role in the big movies, because I think a lot of people would rather see another Batman movie with a cameo by Superman than a Superman movie with a cameo by Batman.
I agree.
So, do it that way. Or get off the big three of, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman can have more movies because she hasn't had any other than the one. But you can bring in other big characters. Flash is supposed to still have a movie, kind of, maybe, sort of, sometime. Make a decent Green Lantern movie.
And that's the sad thing. They could do, oh my God, they could literally do a dozen decent Green Lantern movies. Well, I don't know if they're capable of it, but
they could. That's the key word.
Right, could. Because that's such a big universe unto itself. But.
Well, there's only, 6,000 Green Lanterns. I'm not making that number up. I think it's 6,600 something.
And there are several that are very well known, which would be really, really interesting. I mean, God, there's three that we just think of as like the main I'm sorry, 4 that we think of as like the main Green Lantern.
There's 6 from Earth now.
Or there's 6 now. I was just thinking the Guy Gardner was.
Hal Jordan, Guy Gardner, Kyle Rayner, Jon Stewart. No, not the guy from The Daily Show.
Awesome. No.
And then there's 2 new ones. There's a Muslim guy, which caused a big fuss a few years ago when they introduced him, and a female Green Lantern who's, I'm sorry, her name's escaped me. I've only seen her in 2 books. It hasn't stuck yet. So, yeah, do that. It would be good.
It would be very good. I mean, the characters are so different. Like, I'm not familiar with the 2 newest, but a Jon Stewart Green Lantern movie would be very, very different from a Hal Jordan Green Lantern movie.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about if they're done correctly. Obviously, if they're done like they did the last one.
Or not.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, moving on to another superhero who's not from the United States. Because, it could happen. Japanese superhero Ultraman is getting a live-action U.S. TV series. I know very little about Ultraman other than he looks kind of like DC Comics Deadman, only reptilian, and I know that's not it.
Ultraman is an alien who is sent to protect Earth, and he disguises himself as just another human, and he works, I can't remember what they called it, the Earth Defense Agency or whatever the heck they called it. Uh-huh. He's just another guy. He's a pilot. But occasionally, the threats are too big for the Force to take over, so he turns into his real form of Ultraman, which is the big, shiny, silver and red, weird kind of robot thing with a fin on top of his head.
Reptilian-ish, yeah.
Small fin and big bug eyes. And he does... he goes into various martial arts combats with all these kaiju. And then eventually he'll start to lose his power, and then he has to use his ray, which he always waits until the end, is to just using it to begin with and killing the kaiju immediately or blowing them up or whatever. It's a kid's show back in the 60s in Japan, and then came over here and was dubbed, and is really funny. It's a precursor to the Power Rangers, basically. Cheap costumes, so it'd be interesting to see how they do this, because it was intentionally campy then. And they could go very serious, and they could make it work, or they could keep it campy. So I'm just curious who the target
which might still work is. Even.
Yeah, absolutely could still work. So be curious to see what they did this, because Ultraman is hilarious. Love Ultraman. And I think they actually did 3 movies as a show, but
let's see. Reading here, it says that in 1966 it started, yielded 34 shows, 9 original video animated specials, 30 movies, and over 50 video game appearances.
30 movies?
I am just reading. I could be wrong.
Oh, God, that's crazy. But I have not seen like all the episodes, but I've probably seen 24 of them. And they're hilarious. They're fun. And just the fact that every one of these monsters knows martial arts, that's part of the fun of it. So yes,
I may have to look those up. I'm sure they're on YouTube.
Probably are. There are a lot of
bits and pieces.
Lots of judo throws, which is great. Anyway, so yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I'm curious to see how they'll go with it, though.
Moving on with things that have the potential for being campy. Is this a hit or a miss? We don't know yet. It's an NBC series called, Conway. I had never heard of this, but it's written by John Umansky, and the story centers on a St. Louis detective, Cal Conway, who finds his world forever changed when he wakes up from a coma with exceptional cognitive abilities. And he's trying to figure out through the series whether it makes him... whether it's a blessing or a curse, because apparently the cognitive abilities kill him every time he uses them. Well, I'm sorry, get closer to killing him. Your time is running out. The 2 things that have made me go, this has potential to be interesting. I guess 3 things, really. 1, that actually sounds like an interesting story.
It does.
2, the premise, and I'm just reading this again, the premise is based on an actual real-world condition that affects around 50 people around the world.
Now that's really crazy.
That made me go, ooh, okay. But then there's the miss part of this, because it's going to be produced by Vin Diesel.
Interesting.
Which, Sure, why not? I mean, after Groot, I'm sure he can do this.
Yeah.
Because that goes together. So anyway, any comments on that before I get to the...
Interesting. Yeah, it's a really interesting premise, I would hope. And they won't, because they won't do that. But I would hope that they would do this as a limited run, because, I mean, obviously the clock is ticking, or the calendar is flipping, however you want to look at it, with this premise. At some point, he's going to be dead. Well, don't stretch it out. Just plan it. And it's like, if you want to plan it for 2 seasons, fine, assuming that you'll get there. But I hope that they have this planned out where there's a definite end instead of dragging on and on, because then the premise kind of loses the suspense of, like, is this going to be the one that does it? I mean, if it's popular, it goes on for 7 years, it doesn't deserve to be popular, because then they've gone against their premise. So hopefully they have the guts to do it right. And say,
we found a way to reset the clock. No.
Right. But yeah, that's definitely an interesting concept. Now we have to look it up and see, does it really bring you closer to death every time you think great thoughts? That would be kind of bizarre if it really does that.
How would you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm just saying. Okay, finishing up the show. We've got 4 more stories, but they're all... 3 of them are short. They all get progressively weirder, though.
Yay.
So bear with me on this. The first one comes from a study published by the Medical Journal of Australia, which has come to the conclusion that everyone else in the world has known already. James Bond has a drinking problem. No. They counted that Agent 007 has drunk 109 times throughout his movies, including, 6 Vespers he downed in Quantum of Solace, which would have raised his blood alcohol level to 0.36, which is enough to kill some people. Where was this? This was my favorite part of this. Here we go. In addition, he binge drinks, drives drunk, brawls drunk, has sex drunk, and operates nuclear machinery after drinking, which satisfies more than half the American Psychiatric Association's DSM-5 criteria for alcohol use disorder. No, not Bond. Surely not.
I mean, it's interesting, but is also completely unnecessary, because, like you said, we know that. They address that in one of the films.
Well, I mean, one of the lines that he's known for, martini shaken, not stirred.
Yeah.
Name another line associated with Bond that's in every movie. There isn't one. At least I can't think of one. Can you think of one? I mean, he's got the cute, quippy kill lines after some of the bad guys get knocked off, but...
Yeah, but there are 2 taglines, Bond, James Bond, and shaken, not stirred.
Yeah, but that's his name. That doesn't count.
Right. I mean, but those are in...
My catchphrase is not, hi, my name's Rob, you know.
What is your catchphrase, Rob?
I can't use it on this show. We're trying to keep it family friendly.
There you go. Good job.
Thank you.
It's kind of interesting, but it's also like totally necessary, because I don't remember if it was Quantum of Solace or I don't remember which one it was, but I mean they addressed that.
I think it was Casino Royale. But yeah, I remember it.
But basically, they're drying him out and checking to see if he's fit for service, and turns out he really wasn't, but they let him go anyway because he's Bond, and they figured he could do the job. And the alcohol was part of it. Yeah. So kind of, this has been something that's not just floating on the surface of Bond. This is something they directly talked about. So, it's interesting that he's had 109. Frankly, I'm shocked. I
thought it would be higher.
Yeah, exactly. I figured it would have been like 400 or 500. They physically depicted him drinking, but...
Well, anyway. They only watched the 3 movies. No.
That's what it was. And they had to go out with popcorn, and so they missed some of it.
Oh, jeez. Okay, number 3 on the list of weird movie news of the week. Hot on the heels of the Lego movie, which I'm not sure how you can do that, because that was a few years ago now.
Yes.
They decided, there's a company that decided, we're going to jump on this, making a whole movie out of toys thing, and now there is a trailer for Playmobil the movie.
And have you seen that trailer?
I've been afraid to click the play button.
I actually just watched it about half an hour before we started our show. It's actually pretty funny.
I mean, it's got some names to it. Jim Gaffigan, I recognize. Adam Lambert, I recognize. Kenan Thompson. Daniel Radcliffe is in this.
You know, the only thing that matters is who the writer is, but how well it's written. Because you can put the best actors in a crap script, and it's still going to be crap. But at least from the trailer, it looks very funny. I mean, it looks very much in the vein of the Lego Movie, which would be the whole idea, of course. But like, okay, this could totally work. Is it just? Yeah, obviously, it's just jumping on the bandwagon, and why not? I mean, the Lego Movie made a few dollars, and the Lego Movie 2 will make a few more. Mm-hmm. But I was surprised, happily surprised. I was like, oh, this doesn't look like an utter crap cash grab. I mean, everything in the trailer was funny. So I was like, huh, good.
It just sounds like an utter crap.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like, oh, seriously, a Playmobil? I was like, how ridiculous is that? But
what worries me is that I'm looking at the still that they put before you click the play button on the trailer. Mm-hmm. And you've got 5 characters. In the middle, you've got a little robot, and then you've got a female Viking maybe, and then a James Bond looking character. But back on the left, you have, that's a Viking. And there's a guy with a beard who looks almost exactly like my neighbor Tim up the street. What the hell is Tim doing in this movie? Just utterly baffling. I'm just saying, maybe it's not Tim. It's Tim's twin brother, Steve. I don't know. Number 2 on the list of really weird movie news this week comes from Dora the Explorer, the live action movie, which, boy, are we looking forward to this. Actually, we might be after this announcement. They made a casting move for one of the main characters. Now, it's not Dora. We already know who that is. This is a male character, meaning, your 2 big male characters, Boots the monkey and Swiper the fox. Boots is still out there, but Swiper, no swiping. Swiper has been cast.
Swiper.
And oh boy, you want to take a stab at who was cast as Swiper the fox?
For Dora the Explorer, Nicolas Cage.
You'd think, and yet, I mean, Nick has done. He just did the Titans Go movie. Granted, he finally got to play Superman to do it. No, not in Dora the Explorer. We're going a bit farther than that. Benicio del Toro as
Is that serious?
Yes. I looked it up I saw it in one place and I went, yeah, there's no way in hell that's going to happen. I found it on like IMDb and Dark Horizons and several other sites and went, oh my God, they're serious.
I love Benicio del Toro, but maybe this is one of these things where it's like, I'm going to make my movie my kids can watch, because, they're not going to be watching Sicario. They're not going to be watching The Usual Suspects. They're not going to be watching Sins. I mean, I can't think of anything he's done that's not R-rated and really violent. I mean, he probably has.
The Bond movie he was in. Yes. Actually, I think that was the first movie he was in.
Man.
Which was one of the Timothy Dalton ones, License to Kill, or whatever the other one was called. But even that, no, you can't show that to kids because he ends up getting chopped up at the end of it.
Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, Benicio del Toro can make anything work, but that's crazy. That's just crazy.
So we've got that, but that's not the weirdest news of the week, because I came up with something weirder. And by I came up with, it's in my head. But I can see them doing this. News from the forthcoming Swamp Thing series. They made the announcement that Ian Ziering has been cast as Blue Devil, which in my head means the next casting move they need to make are Luke Perry and Tori Spelling as Zan and Jaina the Wonder Twins, with Jason Priestley as their monkey Gleek, thus completing the Super Friend Swamp Thing 90210 series.
I am totally down for that. As long as they can get Priestley to play Gleek, the monkey, the Wonder Monkey. Jeez.
I hated Gleek.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Jason Priestley, so it fits.
Well, he always sounded like, which is what Gleek sounded like anyway. So,
Swamp Thing, I was excited at first, and now I'm kind of like, wow, this sounds like a train wreck.
They released those pictures.
Yeah.
Here's the first cast pictures. It's man and woman in boat.
Yeah.
And really? Come on, you can do better than that.
You would hope.
And we'll do better than that. On Friday, when we've got reviews of a DC Comics property, the Titans TV series, and a Marvel property, I keep wanting to screw up the title.
Spider-Man?
Into the Spider-Verse.
There you go.
I keep going. It's the first word. It's into. I keep screwing it up. I keep going across. No. Over. No. Through the spider. Screw it. It's a preposition and it's a throwaway thing anyway, according to my English teacher. So there. Ha ha.
That's true. Across the Spider-Verse with music by the Beatles. It would be lovely.
That would have worked.
I'll find out Friday and see if it did anyway.
Yeah, there we go. Tune in Friday for that, and tune in next Sunday when we cover Christmas movies, because it's that time of year.
Yes.
The most wonderful time of the year when you can't get away from the holiday, no matter how hard you try. In the meantime, enjoy the week and get out and go see a movie.
Captain, we're losing power in the warp engines.
I think we should be leaving now.
I'm going to go home and sleep with my wife.
And on that unusually harmonious bombshell, it is time to end.
I am very disappointed!
Man, we have a weird job.
It's shameful, but, it's a living.
And like that, he's gone.
Hey, who turned out the lights?